I'm excited to welcome Matt Granovetter onto the setting trick. We recorded a test audio session a week ago, and you started telling me this story, Matt, about meeting or kibitzing Kathy Way, and I just wanted to go straight into that.
Okay. Did you tell everybody that we haven't discussed one word about what I'm talking about today? There's no preparation on this.
Uh, no, I have not. My
Okay.
listeners
Well, now,
will know that I'm erratic about
now they know.
how I
This
prepare
is
for
this is
these things.
all off the cuff, so to speak.
Indeed.
Okay. So Kathy Way, who passed away recently, it was interesting. She was very big in my life. Of course, um, when I was maybe 20 years old, I was at the New York Hilton and I didn't have a partner, so I kibitzed her at the tournament, and she was playing with her teacher, and we started chatting. And after that, I got to meet her husband, who was Cece Way or Charles Way at the time, and he had invented this new system called precision, and he was sponsoring many little teams. This was before they won any championships, and I was on the C team, and I at one point I moved up to the B team, but but this was my introduction to professional bridge, really through her. But she had ended up having an enormous effect on my life because besides the fact that I was privileged to know her husband should have been in the Hall of Fame years ago. He was a charismatic person and the inventor of a system that the entire country took up at the time. And anyway, she she later, when he passed away, she later remarried and a Jewish man, and went to Israel to see Israel, the country of Israel. And in the meantime, this was now when I was like in my late 30s, 40. It's almost 20 years later. Uh, and I was living in upstate New York with my wife and two children, and Kathy Way suggested that we go to Israel for the Tel Aviv Bridge Festival. So we went to the Bridge Festival with Kathy, and Pamela and I. We ended up with the three of us together winning three events, which was
Wow.
unusual in a short week of about 4 or 5 events, and and that was supernatural. And then we got to see Israel, and we decided that was like a pilot trip. And then suddenly we got the urge to live in Israel from this. And she didn't leave it at that. First of all, one of the things she did was a funny thing. She took us after we made all this money at the Bridge Festival. She took us to her favorite jewelry store in Tel Aviv,
Yeah.
and when I came in, and Kathy said, who was a very strong person, she said, "You have to buy your wife a nice jewel now. You have to buy her. You can." I said, "Sure, sure," but the price. The guy brings out a price tag, which was like 2,700 shekels. What? My wife likes to tell the story that I almost fainted, but so we bought that, and there went the profits, but that was okay. Later on, later on, we decided then suddenly, well, Israel is for us. This is wow, easy.
Yeah.
We won at the bridge. The country's beautiful. We
Yeah.
had spiritual. The next thing you know, we're moving to Israel. And not, what does Kathy Way do? She said the place, she tells us where we should move to as well. She should move to the city of Netanya. So she and my mom, they went to Netanya and they found us the apartment overlooking the sea where we moved to. And you could see how she affected I lived there for 12 years when we had another baby there. So she affected my entire life. She was, with her going back when I was 21 years old, I was in Las Vegas for a blue team versus Aces special match that they were having, and they had a tournament, and they had, but they also had this special match between the blue team and the Aces, the Italian blue team and the Aces. And when I was there, I met Benito Garazzo for the first time, and it was my birthday in December, and I said to Kathy, we were at near a roulette table. I said, Kathy, maybe I could play. Could you get me a session with Benito? Because they were little side games. So she said, I will arrange it. I will arrange it. And she did. And I got my jacket on, and I got my, I put a tie on.
Wow.
That's my mentality at that time,
Yeah.
And not like, to be a slob and everything. And we played, and then there was one hand, and because of this, there was one hand that affected my whole bridge game for years. Wow. And that hand was where I had a singleton to lead against a suit contract, or I had a king-queen combination to lead, and I led the king-queen combination.
Yeah.
And the singleton would have worked smoother. It would have gone ace, rough, down one.
Right.
All right? And Benito took me aside, and he said, Macho, he didn't talk, his English wasn't so good yet. He said, Macho, when I tell you a story, when I was your age, when I was a boy, I learned always lead a singleton. Always. Then, Macho, I grew up. I learned many different plays and ideas, and I become blue team star, and I realized, no, you must think before opening lead. You must think sometimes it's wrong to lead a singleton. Then, as time went on, I keep leading other suits from singleton, but no, it's always the singleton that beats the contract. And now, in my older age, I always lead my singleton. So he went from one stage to another. And after that, I always got my singleton, and it worked pretty well. And I asked my partners also, please lead your singleton. And even...
Did you beat the contract in this particular deal that Benito?
Benito's advice was to lead the singleton.
Did you beat the contract? Did you beat the contract that led him to ask to tell you this? When you led the king,
we didn't. We did not. When I led the king queen, we didn't beat the contract.
Didn't beat the contract.
I had to lead the singleton.
Right. Yeah.
And he was adamant, always lead the singleton. Later on, I wrote a book called Murder at the Bridge Table. And I put Benito in the book telling me the story to always lead my singleton. All right. That was a book about a fictitious book, but it was fiction, but it was about a guy that played in an individual years ago and was murdered by all his partners, sort of in the Agatha Christie method, and because he and all his partners pinned to his shirt in the hotel room all the bridge crimes he had committed. They pinned to his shirt all the hand records
Huh.
and they would circle the cards and what he did to drive them crazy, to hate it. All right. And one of the thing was he didn't need a singleton,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
But it was anyway. That was a thrilling experience for me when I first met Benito, and he wasn't that old. To me, he was old because I was 20, 21, and he was like maybe he was as old as 40,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
at that time.
I didn't do a very good job of introducing you. I realize.
That's all right.
So you've won 6 NABC titles, I think, including the Spin Gold in 2009. You won the Mixed Pairs World Championship in 2006. You've written written and published something like 20 bridge books, and have a bridge magazine, which has sort of moved online, called Bridge Today.
Bridge Today, we published when my wife and I, Pamela, got married in 1983.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago, 93, 103, 40 years ago. Hey, maybe I missed our anniversary this year. We were avid bridge players. Our best friend was a guy named Zia, a young guy from Pakistan, and he would meet us after his. We were working down on Wall Street on the stock exchange, the American stock exchange, where all the option traders were working.
Yeah.
And he would meet us at the end of the day and tell us his stories about what happened at the rubber bridge table, because that's how he spent his day. So, and we would laugh so hard, but we then decided we left Wall Street because we had a baby.
Yeah.
And we left Wall Street because also we didn't like it.
Yeah.
It wasn't our talent.
Got
But
it.
the reason I say we had a baby is because my wife had to leave because she had a baby.
Yeah.
Because we were both on the floor of the American Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
But we weren't money hungry, right or wrong. Okay,
Yeah.
It wasn't that type of thing. We liked, when our first date together was to go to a bookstore and buy a book that we each liked. You know, we were sort of like we had other interests than bridge as well, and they weren't. It wasn't religion at all. We were right. Actually, even more than Orthodox, we're Hasidic.
Hasidic. Okay.
Hasidic. You know, the guys from the 18th century who walk around with long jackets and black hats and white. We don't have white stockings, but we're modern Hasidic. We're with a movement called Lubavitch or Chabad.
Okay.
Chabad is an acronym for 3 Hebrew words which come from Kabbalah. Chabad. In English, it's spelled Chabad, but in Hebrew, it's Chachma is the first word for the C, Bina and Das. Now, Chachma means, and I explain this in my new book this year in Method Bridge, which I sent you. You got a copy right away.
I got a signed copy.
You got a forward copy right away until I fixed it. And Chachma, Bina, and Das, and how you use that also when you play bridge as a declarer. When your Chachma is the first flash of an idea that a person gets about any subject.
Yeah.
You see something, you get an idea, right? So in bridge, dummy comes down, you're the declarer, you get an idea. Oh, there's a singleton, I'm going to rough cards, or there's a suit I'm going to set up. Something that strikes your fancy right away, right? Then Bina is the second word, Chachma, Bina, and Das. Bina is the feminine form, and it's the extension of the idea where you think it through. Well, how am I going to do it? How am I going to go about and make this idea happen? And then Das, spelled maybe D-A-A-S in English, Das means knowledge. Adam knew Eve. Das, Adam, Das, Eve. Also, it means to know, to at that point, after you've done the flash of an idea and you've thought it through, then suddenly you have it, and you're just sure that you know what you're doing. And then you call your first card from dummy. Obviously, this is the first thing we teach beginners: that don't call a card from dummy until you make a plan.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why am I saying that? Oh, that's the acronym for the organization, the branch of Judaism that we belong to, which is a Hasidic branch that goes back to the mystical Baal Shem Tov in the early part of the 17th century. 18th century. 18th century is the 1700s, right? 18th century.
Yeah,
right.
I think so, yeah.
Right. And it's still flourishing today. And it's filled with not only intellectual ideas, like I just mentioned, from Kabbalah, but it's also filled with joy and warmth, which is an important thing in any walk of life.
Yeah.
And having a sense of humor.
Right.
And if you play bridge, you have to have a sense of humor. Otherwise, you never sleep at night.
Yeah.
Right. So somehow my life changed, and we went from completely secular and to adopting this religious lifestyle.
Yeah.
And partly through Kathy Way, and partly because when we moved upstate in New York, we met certain people, and we took our first lesson in Hasidus, which is a religious form of Kabbalah, and people don't understand it at all. Who haven't experienced it, what it is, why we're so interested in it, and why we love it so much. But it's a whole lifestyle. From the beginning, the time we get up in the morning until the time we go to sleep, it encompasses our life. Even when we're playing bridge. All right. You mentioned my only world championship that I won, the mixed pairs, and during that world championship, there were screens at the table, and during the day, one of the things that we have to do as members of Chabad is to say a number of Tehillim. Tehillim are psalms. There are 150 psalms in a. I don't have it here. There are 150 psalms penned by King David and some by Moses that go all the way back 3,000 years. So every day there's a portion that's divided in the month. Say there's 30 days in a month. You might say, and 150 psalms. So you might say around 5 psalms a day.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But some are longer days and some are shorter days. Some days they're longer. Some days they're shorter.
Yeah.
All right. So when I don't have time, because we're starting early in the morning playing bridge and finishing late, I take and Pamela does this too. We take our book of Psalms to the bridge table. Now, screens help a lot, because you could the screen goes up and you're not facing your partner, and you could even lean the book against the screen near the bidding box. And when you're a dummy, you have time. You can take it and start mumbling your psalms, right? But at the same time, you have to keep an ear out for your partner who's calling the cards,
right? And
so that you pull the right card.
Yeah.
So I was doing that near the end of the tournament, and then somebody at the end of the tournament, which we won, a very nice French woman comes over and said, Monsieur Granovetter, I wish I wish somebody would pray for me when I play the hand. I wish my partner would pray for me. But I wasn't really doing that. I was just fulfilling my quota for the day of my religious duties. It had nothing to do with the bridge.
So
Anyway.
but you're like, I mean, you're kind of rare in terms of like high level bridge. You and Pam, both being Hasidic. I mean, I remember being at a regional tournament, and going to a service in your room on the Sabbath.
Yeah, that was nice.
And
That's one of the problems with traveling, but it's a good thing too. On Friday night, we usually would have a service in our room and invite.
But you can't
people.
lock the doors, like you and you can't.
Well,
keep
you can't
score?
use electricity.
Okay.
Because that's electricity is fire. You can't use fire. There are 39 prohibitions during the Sabbath that were all things that they did when they were building the tabernacle in the desert, that the Jewish people did while they were building the tabernacle between the time of getting out of Egypt and the 40 years in the desert to get to Israel, to get to the land of Israel. And during that time, there was a building of a like a traveling tabernacle, and the 40 different jobs that are used to like hammering or making a fire, etc., are the prohibitions that we have for Sabbath. So when you go to a hotel room, you have an electric key. So electricity is out.
Mm.
So it's a problem.
So what do you do?
Especially if the door is locked. One time I was at a tournament by myself, and I was at a tournament by myself, and I had a friend and I couldn't get into my room, and the key was, I had put in the fire. There's a little fire extinguisher. I don't know if you noticed this in hotel floors. You'll always see a couple of fire extinguishers in a glass case.
Okay.
And before Shabbos, that Sabbath, before Shabbos, we'd put the key in there, so we would have it after Shabbos just in case. All right, to get back in the room at the end of the day on Saturday. So, but sometimes the maid would come by, and we would try to get the maid to open the door for us with the key, because we couldn't do it. But there's a prohibition also to ask somebody else to do it. Right. All right, you're not allowed. There's no such thing as a Shabbos goy, so to speak. You're not allowed to ask somebody to do it, because he's not allowed, because it says in that prayers, even neither you nor your servant nor your friend, nobody is allowed to do it for you.
Yeah.
Okay? So it requires some finesse, because you have to, if somebody is around you who's not Jewish, and you're able to get that person to open the door for you, you try to get the person to do it without directly asking them to do it. So I often say, hi. Somebody passes the door and I want to get in. I say, hi. You want to come in for a drink? I start out that way. All right, but I don't ask them to do it. So on this one occasion, I had a friend who was three doors down, and I honestly didn't know if he was Jewish or not. And I said, by the way, hi, good evening. He was going into his room 3 doors down. I said, by the way, I always wanted to know, are you Jewish? And he said, well, my father was, but not my mother. Now, in the Jewish religion, it has to be the mother who Jewish. So I said, that's interesting. You want to have a drink? I want to discuss that. He said, sure. And he comes over. He said, but I can't get in my room because I said, I'm not allowed to open the door because of Shabbos. But I didn't ask him to. I just said, I'm not allowed to. He said, oh, well, I'll do it. And he did it. So that's how I got in that time. So how did you remember that?
Well, I mean, it's probably like the only Jewish religious ceremony I've been to in my life. So, like, and it was in a hotel room at a bridge tournament. It was pretty unique
Right.
experience. uh, yeah.
So we have all sorts of people on Friday night, but that's been actually not a while. We were at a regional in Orlando this year, and we did that also.
You got a service?
Yeah, regional. Yeah, during well, because that's part of it. You have to have that service. It's sort of like it's called Kiddush, and you sanctify the Sabbath by having saying a few prayers and drinking wine and saying the 23rd Psalm and a couple of things.
Yeah, it was funny because I grew up in the Episcopalian church, and so it was actually like a lot of it was familiar to me, which was a surprise for me.
Right, because it, they each religion takes it right, takes a part of something. What's Episcopalian?
It's like it's a Protestant religion, so I've heard that it's like very close to Catholicism. We went to church. Just my mother sort of. I didn't like going, but we went. We had to go as children, and then like two of the schools that I went to also had chapel, and so. Yeah, I don't really know how to describe it. I
No,
guess.
yeah, I understand, but have empathy for you. I didn't like going either when I was a boy to synagogue, and unless you like learn about it, and it's just like anything else. Who would like to play bridge if you didn't learn anything about it?
Yeah.
You would be you right if you were just throwing cards. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be anything.
Right.
Right, but so you have to learn about it to and get into it to do something, anything.
But you're
Right,
devoted to it. I mean, like if anybody can't tell just based on the story that you just told. I mean, like it's an inconvenience for sure. Like for example, with this, just I'm not saying that it's an inconvenience as a whole, but not being able to having to work around your hotel room key. I've heard stories about you and Pamela, your wife, uh, doing a comparison in a knockout match, and neither of you were able to write down the scores. So that
right, right. There was right. Basically, for years, I would play on Sabbath, which wasn't really a it, it was only kosher technically.
okay.
It wasn't kosher in the spirit of Shabbos. It wasn't kosher, and I've tried to reduce that and not do that anymore if I can help it.
Right.
Sometimes there'll be a Vanderbilt or Spingold, and then it reaches that Saturday.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing to have. That's a good problem to have.
That's a problem. That would be a good problem when it reaches that, as long
Yeah,
as it
for
doesn't
sure.
start out. Right. So I've had ups and downs about this. I definitely can. I've sort of been ousted from the in recent years from the USBF, United States Bridge Federation tournaments because they're using electronics instead of cards. So using electronics, I can't possibly compete over Shabbos. Maybe I could convince them to make Saturday an off day or something like that. But then
Yeah, I
they
don't think
then they
so.
don't want to because then it inconveniences other people,
Yeah, yeah, that
right?
would be a big
So
ask.
anyway, that's all right. That's the way it is. But it's right. What you said is right. We couldn't. That was. I always feel a little embarrassed about that, about
Mm,
having to keep score
mm.
without
Without
writing down
writing.
the scores, and it's not the way to do it. Right.
So your
Right.
primary bridge partner is your wife, and it says you met her at the Olympiad at a bridge tournament. in the Netherlands?
Yeah, I was. That was in 1980. 1980 was an Olympiad in the Netherlands, and in some obscure town in the Netherlands. It was called Valkenburg, 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 Netherlands.
Okay.
And what had happened was that tournament, the American team, the Aces, lost to the French team in the final.
All right.
And because of the rules in those days, there was a rule about how you were able to compete in the trials for the North American team.
Yeah.
That are different from the rules today. Today, anybody can compete. It's completely open.
Right.
In those days, you had to qualify by achieving certain good results in American tournaments over the year.
Right.
And the Aces were made up of Bobby Wolf and Bobby Hammond, and Fred Hamilton and Ira Rubin, who also had a nickname, the Beast. Did you know Ira Rubin?
No.
No. And Mike Bissell and Paul Soloway.
Okay.
And that was the team in the Olympiad. However, they switched partnerships in the Olympiad, and Mike Bissell played with Fred Hamilton, and Ira Rubin played with Soloway. For reasons that they were in the Olympiad, you play against a lot of teams to qualify for the final, and you have to not only beat the weaker teams, you have to score very high.
Okay.
In each match, you have to
Right.
blitz them, right, to keep on top. And Soloway and Rubin were a blitz pair. They could completely
Got it.
Score well against a weaker pair. So, but what I was saying was, what happened was that for 1981, Paul Soloway was ineligible to play on the team because of the rules, because he hadn't won enough points to play on the team.
Okay.
And I had. And so they replaced. This was my one and only time on the Aces. I got to play on the Aces, but my partner was Ira Rubin, the Beast. Okay, so I went to Europe to watch them play, and at the same time, suddenly out from a match between the Canadian women and some other team comes this girl who I went, wow, who is she?
Yeah.
Okay, so I go running over, I get introduced, but she, forget it. She's busy with her scorecard. She just came out of 20 hard hands of bridge.
Yeah.
And she said hello, and then just walked right by me, still discussing the bridge hands with her partner, Karen Allison. So that was my introduction. That was my big meeting. That was my big meeting. My real meeting took place. She was living in Toronto a year later, and this is how there's something in the Jewish tradition called shidduchs. A shidduch is a matchmaker. Yeah. A matchmaker comes and matches up two people who might be compatible, and they make a shidduch. But it's very hard to make a shidduch, as you know, because there's so many divorces in the world.
Sure.
Right? How do you do that? Well, sometimes the only being that can make a shidduch is God. God makes the shidduch if you're lucky, and He finds you the right mate. So what God did was he had, did you know Al and Rita Rand from New York? This was Sam Stamen's sister-in-law and brother-in-law. And they were my clients in New York. We would play bridge all the time. And they came to me in April and said, our accountant told us that if we're out of the country on April 15th, we could save a lot of money with our taxes. Okay? But so I said, so why are you telling me? He said, we have to find a bridge tournament outside the country. I said, oh, okay. So we found the Toronto regional was during April 15th. So I go up to the Toronto regional. Now we go to Pamela's side. Pamela, after the World Championship, after discussing hands and after her whole experience, and listen, she would go to the bar at night and she would listen to the Irish team discuss bridge hands, and she would say to herself, I don't know anything about bridge, and I'm playing in a World Championship. These guys are way over me. And she came back to Toronto and gave up bridge from that summer, all right? And she gave up bridge and took a job as a systems analyst, and that was it. Now, that regional, which is 3/4 of a year later, her partner, Karen Allison, accidentally, she says, there's nothing accidental, books two professional dates for the Toronto regional in one day.
Right.
And she's searching and asking people who will play. I need one person to play for me. And she can't find anyone. And then she asks Pamela, and Pamela says, no, I'm working now. I don't play bridge anymore. And she said, come on, I'll do anything for you. And finally she convinces her to come to the tournament.
Wow.
So when I enter the room, there's Pamela. All this had to take place for me with my client's accountant and Karen Allison making 2 dates. All this had to take place for me to meet my wife.
Wow.
And of course I saw her and I go zooming across the room. It was like, and I say, hi, remember me? And she says, no. I said, in Valkenburg. She said, Valkenburg? And then I said, you want to have a drink or dinner? And she says, I'll take the dinner. And that was it. Wow. I made her pay anyway. I didn't have any Canadian money. So on the first date, we went to a bookstore, and that was it. From then on.
Did you buy a book for the other one, or did you buy a book for yourself with the other one's help?
I bought her a book on capitalism, and she gave me a book on socialism.
Wow.
All right, because I was a capitalist and she was a socialist.
Right.
Today we're both capitalists. Nothing to do with that. Just that you grow up and you grow out of socialism.
Yeah.
That's
a good story, man.
Yeah. Anyway, so then what happened to us? So after we're in New York and we go to the stock exchange and all that, because everybody's going to the stock exchange. You've heard of all the bridge players who went to the stock exchange in those days. And we got tired of it, and we decided, my wife loved Virginia Woolf and all her writings.
Yeah.
To the Lighthouse, everything. And Virginia Woolf had a husband, and they had their own publishing company. So I said, well, if we want to have a family, we can't go trouncing around to bridge tournaments all the time.
Yeah.
We have to have a base at home.
Yeah.
So we have to do our bridge from home. So we decided to start our own bridge book publishing company and magazine. And that worked excellently. It was a miracle. I don't know how it worked.
So she got into bridge again once she met you at this.
That was at that time. I was also into the theater world because I had gone back to school at Hunter and gotten a master's degree in children's theater. And I was writing little children's theater musicals at Hunter College. However, even when I met Pamela and she came to New York, however, when Pamela got her eye on all the actresses that I was hanging around with, she said, "No, I think we should stick to bridge." And she immediately got a job as a house player at the Cavendish.
Yeah.
And I quit the theater world eventually, not quite, but eventually. And then that was our common interest. And then I ended up using theater and writing by being a writer and publisher as well, which is part of the art of writing and everything, as you know, right? So it all came out well, and we were able to have a family. And when we were sitting with dinner with a friend in Philadelphia, I'll try to remember his name, but he told us, this was around 1992. This person told us that, you can go to Israel. We were discussing moving to Israel possibly. And the person said, you can do that now because there's a new thing called the internet. And you'll be able to publish through the internet. And we didn't know much about it. It was just starting. And he convinced us, and we ended up bringing our magazine to Israel and publishing our magazine and books in America from Israel. He was right. We were able to do that to some degree. And that's how we ended up combining the two and having a family at the same time. And Pamela gave up. She didn't give up bridge completely because there was Israeli bridge, but basically tournament she had to give up for 20 years to help raise the family, to raise children. So because you can't always be away from the children a week at a time.
So would you come back to the United States for the Nationals?
I would come back. She came back once or twice. I came back several times to play in America. And I was the first person to work on BBO. On BBO in 2000, maybe the year was 1999. And we were living in Netanya, where Kathy Way had put us. And when we got and I got an invitation to play on a trials team with Ronnie Rubin, who was a longtime partner in New York. And Ronnie, Ronnie Rubin?
Yes.
Yeah. And we didn't know how we're going to practice, but Fred Gittleman, who was a friend of Ronnie's, said, "You practice on my new invention, Bridge Base Online." So I was sitting in an apartment overlooking the Mediterranean, and Ronnie was in Las Vegas, and we both got online, and we got on something called BBO, and there were only 3 people. You know how you come online now, there's 4,000 players, 8,000 players. There were 3 people.
Wow.
On BBO. And Fred, me and Ronnie, and he said he took us to the bidding room. He directed us where we could bid and practice our system on BBO, long distance.
Is Ron Iris the Beast's son?
Huh?
Is Ron the Beast's son?
Ron? No. He has no relation.
He's not related to Ira Rubin?
No, different Rubin.
Wow.
Right, different Rubin family. Right,
well,
right.
Funny.
Hey, that's interesting that I played both Rubins. Right.
Oh.
I never realized that. Right. I think of the people by their first name often, and not their second name. Right. So it all comes together in the strangest things. And I'm trying to write a book about my life, because the strange thing about the world of bridge and the world of Judaism is that there's a lot in common. That people don't realize it. The way we became religious again was initially through Patty Kane. Now,
Right.
Patty Kane is Jimmy Kane's wife.
Yeah. Now widow.
And is a dear friend for 50 years with us. And right before we decided, maybe right when we moved upstate, which was about 1988, we moved upstate.
Yeah.
Patty Kane was playing bridge with my wife and talking about the Bible. And my wife was cringing, and I was cringing. We all thought that Patty had lost a little bit of her marbles, right? She was talking about the Bible. What had happened was she had seen a Holocaust survivor, rabbi's wife, on TV in New York, and was enamored with her, and brought her to our house and to learn Torah together. And the next thing you know, she had 40 Park Avenue women coming every week to the women's class in her own apartment. And she invited, when she was playing bridge with Pamela in Washington, D.C., she was talking in between hands. Oh, you see, when I play the 2 instead of the 4, it's the same thing in Hebrew. If you do this letter instead of that letter, it changes the meaning of it in the order that you do it. And then my wife's listening, but she's still not convinced.
Yeah.
So I was a closet Orthodox, because I'd had a little of it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And Patty Kane said, you have to come down from Albany and come to one of my classes. And so Pamela went to one of our classes and met this Rebbitzin, Youngreis, her name was. And Rebbitzin Youngreis the first thing she did was, when she saw my wife, she grabbed her by her face and said, I love you. Because they had immediate chemistry together.
Huh.
The next thing, that's a good opening. That's always you like somebody who does that, right? That's a good way to make friends.
I mean, potentially, it could be a little disturbing also.
Right, it depends. As long as you know the person.
No, I mean,
as long as yeah, she's at Patty Kane's house.
I can see the other side of it, but go on.
Right. I can see that too. Right. But she gave a whole lecture about the portion in the Bible, in the Torah, where Rachel and where Jacob goes to work for his future father-in-law to marry Rachel. He works for several years and he's going to marry Rachel. And then when he goes to the wedding canopy, there's a veil, and the father gives him Leah instead, the older daughter, instead of Rachel, even though he had agreed.
Okay.
You're to give Rachel. So what happened? I guess they kept the veil on because he didn't know it was. He didn't know it wasn't Rachel.
Right.
Okay. He thought it was Rachel. So what happened was that before that, just to make the story clear, Rachel tells Jacob before the wedding that, you know, that my father might bring Leah, all right? So,
right.
And I'll be covered up.
Yeah.
So we'll have a code.
Oh, okay.
And you'll ask me the code.
Okay.
And I'll answer under the wedding canopy.
Right.
Okay? And that's how you'll know it's me.
Okay.
He said so that was the arrangement. So he, under the wedding canopy, he goes and he asks, and Leah gives the answer to the code. Rachel's sister Leah knows the answer because Rachel told Leah, her sister, what she double-crossed Jacob.
Yeah.
And told the answer to her. And the reason she told the answer was because it would be so embarrassing for her sister if there was a wedding going on and suddenly he realized it wasn't the right woman, and he left the wedding canopy. And she didn't want her sister to be embarrassed.
Okay.
So she was willing to give up her husband so that her sister wouldn't be embarrassed.
Okay.
Well, this story had such an effect on my wife, Pamela, because we were brought up with the secular idea that you're a good person if you don't hurt anyone. That's it. That's all you have to do. Just don't. If you don't hurt anyone, you're good.
Yeah.
We didn't know you actually had to go the extra mile and give up your husband just so that your brother or sister isn't embarrassed.
Huh.
Right? Which was Rachel's ethic.
Wow.
There. Anyway, going back to the Bible, it worked out all right in the Bible because Jacob got to work for another 7 years and got Rachel anyway. Also, in those days, you could marry more than one.
I see.
Right. So, but anyway, that was how Pamela got captured by it, by the kindness by the story of the kindness that was from Rachel and Leah. And maybe you would think maybe that's not so kind to Jacob, but Jacob could handle it. He was a man. It's the woman that sometimes can't handle it. If you know what I mean. Men can take punches. Women don't take punches, right?
Well, sadly, I have to pause our conversation.
Unless you're in the Olympics. Okay, right. Okay, we'll pause now, and we'll talk some more sometime. So you see, you asked me a question, John, and it brings out a lot of memories. I have to remember everything.
All right.
Anyway, I hope this worked out with what you want.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. That's for sure.
Okay, I'm not talking much bridge, but a little.
No, we'll get there, and it's
right.
The
Ask me next time about Israel because it was our Bridge magazine and our Bridge subscribers in Israel who helped us get over the culture shock in Israel. Okay?
All right.
Remind me of that story, amongst others. It doesn't matter. You can tell me anything. Every day there's another story in my life, it seems.
All right. Well, I'll be in touch.
Okay, John. Okay. I'll let you go. I didn't know. I wasn't watching the clock. I'll see you later.
All right.
Okay, I'll be in touch.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Hearing the story of Rachel and how that inspired her and subsequently you, I think, to really become devoted.
That's right. At that time, we were living in Boston, New York, which is between Saratoga and Albany. And we had this was our third or fourth year. We had bought a house there.
Okay.
And it was in the middle of nowhere. And it was because our friends, Paul and Sandy Trent, had a house there in the area near Saratoga. And somehow we went up to visit them and found a house we liked there.
Okay.
I don't know. It's all. Later on, we found that in Hasidus, everything is planned out. There's no such thing as in other words, we don't believe in such a thing as a coincidence. But there's a whole plan, divine plan, and then it's good to actually see the plan if you can in everything you do in life. Like sometimes you miss the bus to work, or you miss an airplane, or you get stopped in traffic.
Yeah.
And you have to say to yourself, there's a reason for this. Sometimes when I'm in traffic, I call this traffic control. It's not, the angels are conducting, making sure the cars aren't crashing. So they had to stop. You had to use you to put you here to stop. Sometimes things happen, and then you don't see what is. You don't see the good result from it until maybe the next day or a week later or even a year later. And then you realize, hey, that was good that happened.
Yeah.
Even though at first it looked bad.
Right.
Anyway, that's not how we got caught up in it. We got caught after this. My wife came back from New York, and Patty Kane had a session with Rabbi and Rebbetzin Youngreis, I have mentioned, and all the people there, and the story of Rachel and Leah, and how she gave her she was kind to her sister to give her the code under the canopy. She wouldn't be embarrassed, and we came back, and then we had always realized after we had two children that there was something that was a stunning thing for us. In other words, we realized that it can't just be Darwin's theory that we had two children. There's something wrong. All right? It's too miraculous that you have relations and suddenly you have these children.
Yeah.
All right? And so we started to investigate different branches of Judaism.
Yeah.
First, we went to there's different branches. There's this called a Reform movement. There's a conservative movement. There's an Orthodox movement, and there's a Hasidic group known as Chabad, which is the most famous which is the most popular of the Hasidic groups. And then there's a million other Hasidic groups in Brooklyn, but they're usually just in Brooklyn or in Israel. Chabad is all over the world. So we were very lucky that we rejected the Reform and the conservative, because we went to the Reform and the rabbi was a woman, and the kids were her kids were running around, and the father was praying, and there was no order in it, right? Yeah. We wanted some kind of order.
Right.
The order, right? So we went to. We also at that time met Dennis Prager. I don't know if you know Dennis Prager.
No.
Dennis Prager is a popular conservative talk show host, and he wrote a whole series of weekly things called Ultimate Issues, and we started subscribing to it.
Yeah.
And he would bring you in. And he was Jewish, and he's still around. And he would bring you into the idea of studying the Torah and Judaism in a purely logical way, not by faith but by logic.
Yeah.
For example, at that time, he used to tell the story. Say you were in a dark alley in New York City at night, and suddenly you saw these three big husky guys walking towards you, right, with bracelets around their necks and everything. All right.
Okay.
And then, would you be happy or not to know they had just come from a Bible study?
Probably happy, I would think. Okay.
All right. So there is religion. I don't say that religion can't cause bad things, but at that time, that was a good approach that he made. But he made other arguments and things to show that it's a good idea to believe in God. Yeah. That was his approach, and he's an excellent talker. You should look him up. I think he has a whole show on the internet now. He's very prominent. Okay, so he goes to Prager University now. Anyway, after that, we saw an advertisement in a Albany newspaper that there was going to be a Hanukkah party at the Y. Okay?
Yeah.
So it said Hanukkah party run by Chabad. And we said, what's Chabad? Chabad. What is that?
Yeah.
It's not really Chabad, but it's the guttural pronunciation of the CH, Chabad.
Right.
Which you can't write in English. there's, all right, you could probably write it in, there's probably in maybe German or another language. But Chabad, so we didn't know, so we called up we had friends in a conservative school, which is not Hasidic, and we asked them, what is this? What is this Chabad? What is this? They're running a Hanukkah party. And they said, oh, no, you don't want to go there. I said, why not? He said, oh, they're crazy. They're really crazy. All right? So they're offbeat completely. Okay. So, of course, when my wife and I heard that, we said, that's the place for us. We enjoy characters. You know, we came from the bridge world. And who did we like most? But people who were unusual, right? Yeah. We like to be entertained. Yeah. So we went to that party. Yeah. And they were right. There were no cups. There were no forks. There were, we were shocked. They were actually had soda out. Coca-Cola. We were off that. We were health nuts a little bit. So, but anyway, they were incredibly warm people, and they were the opposite of the Praga idea. They were spiritual. They were just totally loving warmth. Huh. All right. So we made fast friends with them, and with the family that was the head of the area of Albany. Yeah. And we soon started learning from them. But our first lesson was remarkable. We went to their house, and he wanted to teach us something about Hasidus, which is a religious version of Kabbalah. And he took a piece of paper and he made a circle and the world and this, and then he pointed this way, and then it lasted about 1 minute. And we looked at each other and we turned to him and said, we don't know what you're talking about, but we know that if we study, we'll learn, because what our students do in Bridge is they come to us and they don't know what we're talking about. Yeah. In Bridge, when we say to count this and the shape of the hand and this and that. Right. So we know from being Bridge teachers ourselves that we should never reject anything because we don't understand at the beginning. Mm. We have to learn it and study it to understand it. Right. So that was lucky that we came from the Bridge world and from the Bridge teaching world, so that we knew to be humble about how to learn about Hasidus. Mm. And without prolonging this, I'll go. So we eventually studied and learned and joined with their philosophy. Mm. But then the next thing we knew, in 1993, we had somebody, not Hasidus, somebody had a lecture. They called it a lunch and learn at a synagogue, and they were talking about mitzvahs, which was a mitzvah is something is a good deed that you do that God commands you to do, like give tzedakah, like give money to charity, and is one of hundreds. But we were discussing Maimonides, who was a philosopher. Maimonides determined, yes, it is one of the mitzvahs. And we looked at each other and said, well, if that's one of the mitzvahs, why don't we do it? We should move to Israel. Now, this is, see, I don't know how we got that idea, how we took that idea and ran with it, but it must have been implanted in us, because who would say that, right? But we were young and idealistic. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we said, we have to go. Okay. So I investigated, and then that's what I told you, that Kathy Way, who's a prominent Bridge player, she told us there's a tournament in Tel Aviv. And that's how we ended up going as a pilot trip to Israel. And then we ended up going, even though it has nothing to do with being Hasidic, to go to Israel. In fact, most of most of the, we learned later that most of the people who are Hasidic in Lubavitch is another word for Chabad, because Lubavitch is the city in Europe where it came from in the 18th century. Well, most of them have the philosophy of not necessarily to move to Israel. There is a large Chabad in Israel, but their philosophy, the main philosophy is wherever you are, make Israel there. Mm. In other words, make where you live a place of holiness. And then on top of that, make your home a holy home. All right? And on top of that, there's something in the Bible that says God says you shall make a tabernacle. This he's talking to the people in the desert, and make it holy. But what it really means on the Kabbalistic or Hasidic level is you shall make your mind, your body, yourself is your tabernacle, and you should make yourself, work on yourself and work on your character traits and and by doing that, you make the world better. Just by starting with yourself. So that's when anyone says, what should I do to make the world better? There's so many people who make the world better and they end up making the world worse because they have this mission or that mission. If you work on yourself, and work on your children, they're good to work on too. You make yourself better, you make the world better. So we didn't have to move to Israel. But of course, we moved to Israel, and then when we got there, there was a note on our door in the Tanya, our apartment door. It said, "Hi, my name is Sarah Wertheimer. I live down the block, and I subscribe to your Bridge magazine. And if you come to me, I'll help you with all your to get around town and everything, and do everything for you." And we did, and she was a great help. So that's one connection where our Bridge magazine, and the subscriber helped us helped us with life in Israel. Here's how she helped us. She would take us to the municipality, and she spoke fluent Hebrew. We didn't speak at all well. So she would say they need electricity, they need in their apartment, they need the telephone, this or that. But the way she would do it is, for us, it sounded like this. She would go up to the person in charge, and she would say, rah, 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 and they would go, ah! Like they were like coming from, that's what it sounded to us. And then they started screaming at each other. And then everything quieted down, and she turned to us and said, "It's all settled." So she knew how to deal with all the somewhat communist, because there's a sort of a communist element there was then. It became more capitalistic as time went on. But we also had a third baby there. So then we were there for 12 years, and then our children were coming back here, and we came back here, and that's what happened.
Did you become a citizen of Israel?
Yeah, we became a citizen when we went, because you got a lot of freebies, but we weren't. We came back because we were one of the reasons we came back is because we were unhappy with the government of Israel as a state. We were there for spiritual reasons, but the government of Israel wasn't protecting their people. They were doing all. We never understood the government. Luckily we never really learned Israeli Hebrew well, because otherwise we would have been listening to all sorts of terrible things on the news, because there's constant news there all the time. The Israelis love to listen to the news shows best. And as you could see, they never solved the problem.
Yeah.
between the I hate to call them Palestinians because my mother and father were Palestinians. They moved to Israel in 1948, and came back a year later. But they called all the Jewish people in Israel were called Palestinians then, because it was named Palestine by the Romans 2,000 years ago. So there was no Arab group called the Palestinians. They took that name from the Jewish people and called themselves Palestinians. So now, in general, people think Palestinians are them, and we are, and versus the Jews. But no, the Jews were all Palestinians. Ben Gurion was a Palestinian. I'm reading a book that was written in 1970, all about Israel, and really about how Israel was, how Americans helped with all the airplanes and arms that went to Israel in 1948 to win the war in 1948. And the entire book, calls every Israeli a Palestinian. They don't say the Israelis. It only became the Israelis versus the Palestinians when Arafat took the name of Palestine, that he was a Palestinian. Of course, he was never a Palestinian. He was Egyptian. But all so that's a long story. I didn't mean to go into all these politics. But if you look at history, it's all stupid. Israel was supposed to be the homeland of the Jewish people. And then all these workers came in 1948, 49, 50. All these migrants came in, and they suddenly got a leader in 1975, 80, maybe 80, of this horrible guy named Arafat. And they created a whole new culture, claiming that they were there for thousands of years. They were never there. They were just there for the last 20 years. But the whole thing is silly because the government of Israel has never figured out how to handle the situation. So, I don't know what to say. I don't want to.
Okay, we'll move on.
I'll say this. They should have their own place.
Yeah.
If you see a map, they should have their own place somewhere in the Mideast if they want, or they could have it in Kentucky or wherever they want. But there shouldn't be one spot in Israel where there's a group of people teaching their children to kill Jews. That's stupid beyond belief, right? You can't have an enclave of people smack in the middle of your state or country that are taught to destroy the country. It's just dumb beyond belief. But with politics and everything, and we won't go into the deep state now. Okay. We'll
good.
Talk about that later. All right, good. All right. Now we'll go to bridge.
We started out this conversation with Kathy Way.
Yeah.
And you talked about her, like how she helped you go to Israel, but like more like, what was just like your father was a professional bridge player. You were obviously a good player at this time when you're kibitzing Kathy. Did you started, she hired you to be her partner. You were her teacher. Like, what was the...
Right. Her husband, C.C. Way, had teams. He invented the Precision Club, and he had teams. And also I was friends with Ronnie Rubin from childhood, and he was working down on Wall Street. I was 22 years old. So he called me up one day and said, do you want to play the Vanderbilt, which is a big knockout in the spring? And he was working for Sam Stamen, a company called Strand, which was an investment company.
Yeah.
And they said they were looking for a partner for him. So he knew me, and he said, I'll play with you, and Sam will play with Victor Mitchell, and Johnny Crawford will play with John Solidor.
Okay.
Okay? And I said, great. But he said, we have to practice. We had started to play precision already, so we made our version of precision, and we would meet in Chinatown, near where he worked.
Yeah.
And we would bid hands, and the best way to practice is always to bid hands, especially if you're planning to play a complicated system and you want to be comfortable and used to what you're doing. It's like hitting a ball against the wall. You have to hit the ball against the wall in tennis 1,000 times to be comfortable. And we would meet in Chinatown, and C.C. Wei would come down and meet us at the restaurant, and he would teach us he would help make us practice. He had strips of hands that would practice. Then he taught us how to do it with a deck of cards, where you just take out the 2s, 3s, and 4s and deal 2 hands. And then and he also taught us how to use chopsticks properly. We were doing it wrong. He actually put the food in the rice bowl. We took the food and put it in the rice bowl, and then ate from the rice bowl.
Got it. Was he was C.C. Wei a strong player, or
no? He was an average player, but he was smart.
But like, didn't the blue team already play like the strong? Didn't they already play strong club? Like, how is it different?
The blue team. The you mean the Aces team?
No, I mean the Italian blue team. They played.
The Italian team played their 3 different versions of strong club. The blue, Poche and Garazzo played the blue team club, and then Belladonna played some other version, and then Papastici and his partner played some other version. But they were the first people playing strong club.
Yeah.
Then C.C. Wei invented a simpler strong club that anybody could pick up, because the blue team club and their versions were canapé. You opened a 4-card major with a longer minor. You bid controls over 1 club, etc. But C.C. Wei's was brilliant because it was natural and easy. A club of hearts showed 5 hearts. A club of spades showed 5 spades. A club. It was simple. All right, and at that time, all the average players in New York that I knew took it up, and suddenly they could win a Swiss team because they could outbid their opponents. Right? It was 1 slam. I thought it was brilliant. So anyway, we took it up, and after that, C.C. Wei got a team together from China and Taiwan, some combination, and went to the World Championships and came in second in the World Championships, promoting his system. And Alan Truscott helped him a lot. He was the writer for the New York Times bridge column.
What was the kind of the juice for him in terms of having created the system?
What was the what?
The juice for him. Like what motivated him? You think
I think he had read a book by a Chinese player called the Theory of Distribution, which I don't know. And then suddenly he brought it to bridge. I remember that book. It was all about what's the chance of this distribution or that distribution, and he brought it to bridge. He was a great. I went to his house, and he and his friends were there playing mahjong.
Yeah,
I thought mahjong was a game played in the Catskills by Jewish ladies and things, but crack, bam. I don't know if you know mahjong.
I played it when I was a kid.
Tiles, right? But the way these Chinese were playing it was for money, and it was boom, 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 boom. It was like really professional.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was pretty smart in as a games player in general, but and I played with him at Alworth's Mayfair Club in the Wednesday night imp game several times. We would go there and play, and he would be he was just somebody that people didn't seem to know well because he I don't know why. Maybe because Kathy outshone him. She was glamorous, and he was sort of in the background.
Did you ever win that imp game?
One time with him.
Yeah.
He was so excited. Anyway.
I had a question there. You've won a world championship, the mixed pairs, and you've also won the spin gold. Are those your two biggest wins?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
The spin goal was easy. I don't know why. We just floated through the whole week, and we were never down in any quarter from beginning to end. It was amazing. Wow. But we had a Dutch trio, and me, Russ Ekblad, and Ronnie Rubin. And for some reason, it just worked easy. I don't know why, but the mixed pairs was another story. I was playing with Karen McCallum, and she had just gotten over cancer, and we were both there. We didn't have a partner, so we played, and then and then again, as you know, in bridge, the best way to win is for your opponents to make mistakes. For right? Sure. So our opponents were very cooperative and made a million mistakes.
Right.
Right. So that was good. But my first exciting win was the Lancia Cup when I was 25.
Yeah.
There was a tour of 4 cities in the United States where the Italian champions would come with Omar Sharif.
Right.
And they challenged a team in each city. And if you beat them, the prize was a Lancia car.
Right.
Right. So this was a promotion by Lancia and Alitalia Airline. So we represented the New York. First, we had to win some one-day Swiss, which was a miraculous also, all right, because only one team can win.
Right.
And I was playing with Ronnie Rubin.
Yeah.
And Peter Whitesell was playing with Alan Sontag, and we were all in our 20s.
Yeah.
And so we went to play, and we met Omar, and we were all charmed by him and everything. And that was the most exciting tournament. I'll tell you my favorite story, which about Omar.
Okay, like. Please. Yeah, absolutely.
Omar, I hope everybody knows Omar. He was a famous actor. Hey guys, did you see Funny Girl or his famous role was in what's the Russian Civil War novel, Dr. Zhivago. Yeah, that was his best. Right. So this was right after that, and he was very famous. But he loved.
This is the story that you told on Sorry Partner about the note at the table.
Yeah. Did I tell that already? Okay, so
you told it on the other podcast.
Okay, I told it on another podcast. Sorry. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, anyway. Okay, I won't tell it. But Omar had started playing badly towards the end of the match because he got a note. Right. I'll give you the punchline right now from a woman who was waiting. It wasn't clear to me whether who loved gourmet food, horse racing, bridge, acting, and women, which one he liked In what order? Maybe it was even 20%. We used to go to a tournament, and he would have his own chef. Well, we went to The Hague, and I played with Zia in The Hague in 1987 or something. Omar was there, and he brought his own chef to the tournament to cook food after the session, so he could chat about the hands with everybody and eat gourmet food.
How did you and Pamela become such good buddies with Zia?
That was because when we first met, Pamela and I, she moved from Canada to New York. She had been living in Canada, and that was we had met in 1980, and in 1981 the World Championships.
Yeah, you told that story.
Were in New York.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the Bermuda Bowl was at the Bermuda Bowl there was this guy Zia.
Yeah.
And the Pakistan team had won the European something, and this guy Zia was there, and we became friends with him, and that's where. And then he said the Pakistan team needs a coach. Why don't you be our coach?
Yeah.
I said, well, I'll be the coach. What do they want? And he said, well, come to a meeting. So we go to the meeting, and the Pakistan team, I never saw anything like this. They have their culture, they have no shoes on, and they like to hold their foot, and they're really Oriental. And he said, what is it that you want most from me as a coach? And they said, we want to meet the available American women. I said, oh, that's what you want from me? Oh, you will be the best coach.
Were you still in the theater at that time?
What's that?
Did you still have your theatrical connections at that time?
What connections?
You said that there were beautiful women in the theater. I said, were you still in the theater at that time?
No. They wanted the beautiful women at the bridge tournament.
Got it.
And they're playing in the women's championship.
Got it.
In my experience, there aren't usually too many beautiful women in the women's championship. Nor are they beautiful men in the open. Be careful. Nor are they beautiful. Generally, the men have big stomachs and the women.
All right.
But I think they're all. To me, they're all beautiful. But and as you grow older, they're even more beautiful. But the Pakistani team was excited, and they actually reached the final in that tournament.
Yeah.
Right, and that was the first World Championship for Mextroth and Rodwell that they won, but they were angry with us at first that we were the so-called coaches of them, but they didn't realize that we weren't coaching them anything about bridge.
So how were you as a matchmaker?
We were just telling them, this woman is married. No, this woman's not married. All right, so that's how we became friends, and then he moved to New York and wanted to get into the big money game.
Yeah,
with Jack Dreyfus and Milton Petrie and all people with millions of dollars, and they were playing for 10 cents a. No, they were playing for $1 a point. Right, and Zia was a rubber bridge player, and he was friends with Michael Rosenberg, who also moved at that time to New York.
Yeah,
and we were very close to Michael, and although we didn't understand what he was saying a lot of the time because his English was so Scottish, but we ended up on the American Stock Exchange because of Michael wanted us on his. He was kind and brought us down to work there, but Zia, he just wanted to play rubber bridge in the big game. So we introduced him to Ace Greenberg and Jimmy Kane, and he worked his way into the game, and he was very happy because he could make a living in New York when he was in New York. And he got an apartment in Trump Tower.
Yeah.
He was very happy.
Yeah.
So that's how we became friends. He has to say, he sent me his last book. He sends me guys. And by email, I have to check out this, edit that, do this, do that. He likes to involve everybody in his books and his programs. But
And
he's a character beyond belief, right?
Didn't Pietro Campanelli work for your Bridge magazine in Israel, Bridge Today?
Pietro Campanelli is Migri's husband.
Yeah.
No, but he gave us a lot of advice and things. Migri played with my wife some, and he visited, and we socialized with the two of them, and he helped. I think he helped develop our strong club a bit. He was giving advice from his experience. Well, you know him?
Yeah. And I think I remember when I first, because I played with Migri for a period of time, and I think I thought I remember him saying that he wrote for a Bridge magazine in Israel that I thought was yours.
Oh, he also wrote for Bridge Today. Right.
Yeah,
he would send articles for Bridge Today. Of course. Yeah. He was wonderful. He also helped us to modify our spaghetti sauce. He was very upset when we after the pasta was cooked that we would rinse it. He said, "No, don't rinse the pasta." So we learned a lot from him. Besides Bridge, he gave us a second good sauce. I remember.
Were you going to say something else?
No.
So I got an email. So the reason that I just reached out about interviewing you, which was a while ago, is because I got an email from a fellow named Michael Botwin, who's a bridge player. You know him?
Probably, and I don't recognize the name. Michael Botwin?
Yeah, so he said he suggested that you talk about C.C. Way and Al Roth, but he said he's more interested in hearing where you are right now with some of your ideas and theory, including he was very impressed by obvious shift signaling concept, but your most recent book didn't refer to it at all. And he's also interested in your GUS system.
Oh. Well, the GUS system was based on a system when I was 20 years old that Dave Cliff came over at my house and taught us told us how the Italian system was wrong, that they were treating singletons like kings. They would cubit a king or they would cubit a singleton, but a cubit of a king is so different from a singleton because you might make a cubit and your partner has ace, queen, jack, fifth.
Yeah.
And in one case you have 5 tricks, in another case you have a singleton opposite the ace, queen, jack, fifth.
Right.
So he said we have to do away with that, and he had developed a system. So Ronnie and I adopted his system, which became a system called the Ultimate Club, and Ronnie was very successful and won a number of American championships and a world championship with Mike Becker playing the system, right? And then Gus is a more Gus. I played mainly with my wife, and that was a system that was also developed with Ronnie Rubin later on, and which was I guess it was a simpler version than the previous one. Mm-hmm. And what it was is that if one hand is the captain and one hand is the crew, so the captain would ask questions with a big hand, and the crew would tell his exact shape and strength and so forth. This was all, we did this even at the very beginning with Dave Cliff's system back in years ago, but it became we just made it more sophisticated when we realized, and simpler, when we realized that it's the balanced hand in general that wants to hear from the distributional hand, not the other way around. Because if the distributional hand hears from the balanced hand, you don't know what's opposite your singleton.
Right.
But if the balanced hand knows the singleton is in clubs or hearts or diamonds, he can look at his suit and he knows, just like a splinter bit.
Right.
It makes sense. So that's the Gus system. And when we tried to make it different compartments and make it, we made a number of booklets on it, but it didn't really take off, and it's really too hard for the average player.
Right.
But it's great fun to play, and I played it with we played it with some other people. We played it with Joanna. My wife played it with Joanna Stansby successfully, and I just played one time with Sylvia Shee, and we were second in the blue ribbon, and we played it. She was able to learn it quickly, and I played it with Russ Ekblad, but he also wanted to play Canapé with it, so we had to change it, and we did very well with him. I did very well with him playing similar system. And it's great it's fun, because if you're bidding and you know your partner's shape, it's so exciting to be able to figure out where should we play the hand and where should we place the final contract. So you asked me about that. What did you ask me about before that?
Obvious Shift.
Obvious Shift was a book that mainly Pamela wrote when we were living in Israel, and all it did was you know how you lead a suit against a contract, and your partner can only give you two signals, a high one or a low one.
Right.
There's no way you could do three signals. It's usually high or low.
Right.
So high means continue in traditional methods. High is continue and low is shift. But what does low mean to shift to? Which suit do you shift to? When I was playing with one of my dad's cronies when I was 15 years old at the Duplicate in West Orange, New Jersey, I remember a hand where he led a card against a suit contract. Dummy had ace, king, jack, fourth, and I had queen third behind it. And Declara played the ace, and I played low instead of playing encouraging. Okay? When he got back in, he shifted to Dummy's weak suit, 3 little away from his king, and I didn't have anything to help. And he was so upset at me. He got all as you would be. He said he took the card. He took from my queen third. He took the middle card out of my hand and said, "This is what you play. You tell me you want me to continue. You don't tell me to shift."
Right.
All right. So I always remembered that. That was a big lesson. And sometimes when Dummy has ace, king, jack, fourth, and you have 3 little, you also encourage partner to shift, to continue. Why would you ask partner to continue from the ace? Dummy has ace, king, jack, fourth, and you have 3 little. He leads low, it goes ace, and you say, please continue. Why? Because in the other suit, and Dummy has 3 little, and you have 3 little, and you don't want him to shift to that suit.
Right.
Because that suit, the 3 little suit in Dummy, is called the obvious shift.
Got it.
So the obvious shift system goes way back to the beginning of bridge. There's nothing new about it.
Yeah.
It's just using your brain. Don't just signal in the suit that was led, but signal about the whole hand. Is this, in your opinion, is it better to continue or better to shift to Dummy's weak suit? And that was the whole thing with obvious shift.
Got it.
Some people got it.
I was surprised in researching for this interview that you've never won an NABC event with your wife.
I wish you wouldn't bring that up. But maybe she won't listen. If we ever have dinner, when we next have dinner together, please don't mention that.
Okay.
The closest we came was we were played in the national mixed pairs a few years ago.
Yeah.
And near the end of the event, I forgot that my 9 was high or my 8, and I didn't cash it, and I played another suit,
right.
And then my wife got squeezed, and they made an over trick. Well, that was on the last hand. Kerry Sanborn and her husband bit a remarkable slam to win just edges by a couple of match points. So it's a sore point. I would like never to mention this again.
Okay.
But mainly because another reason is we didn't have that many chances, of course, because she was home as a mother for 20 years. And then we professional bridge. I got hired with people like Ronnie or Russ on teams. So, and she got hired on women's teams. So sometimes you don't have that many chances,
right,
to win. You'd have to be playing a lot more than we were playing, right? I mean. Another one of my favorite wins was the Cavendish with Michael Rosenberg. We won with the lowest score ever in the Cavendish money tournament, which was exciting.
The pairs
as a pair.
Yeah,
but I also won with my wife. See, in the Cavendish teams with Zia and with Jimmy Kane and with Ace Greenberg and with Sparky Rosenblum. Did you know him, Jimmy Rosenblum?
I don't know that's the only name I don't know.
Right. So we won that a couple of times. That was fun, but we didn't play. But playing pairs with your wife is much harder than playing teams because every trick counts, right? Right? Yeah. It's a more volatile game, and you have to take chances and make bad bids to do well sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's a different game. So I enjoyed when we came back from Israel. My wife's idea was that we should go play in regionals. And we would get hired if we won enough. So that's what we did, and we played teams. So that was fun. And teams is much more relaxing, as you know. You just you're trying not to do anything wrong.
Yeah. So how much did you and Michael Rosenberg win when you won the Cavendish?
How much what?
How much money did you guys win? Yeah.
I don't remember. This was when it was held back in New York. Not that much. I think at Cavendish is where you have to put up money to win money. It's just other people bet on you, right?
Yeah, I think so. I've never played in it.
The biggest amount of money I ever won in one day in bridge was with my wife. She'll so you can bring this up. When we got married.
Yeah.
And right after we got married, there was a bridge tournament in New Orleans, an American National.
Right.
And there was a one-day, before the tournament, there was a one-day professional pairs.
Yeah.
And we won, first prize was $10,000, and we won the $10,000.
Did you actually get the car from Lancia? Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Oh, going back to Lancia?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got the car. I sold the car and used the money. I sold the car in 1975, and I used the $5,000 that I got for the car, which was a lot of money in 75 to move into Manhattan and get my own apartment. But so I never used it. The only guy who used it was Peter Weitzel. He was the only one who took the car. He just loved riding around in that car. You could see him with his hippie hair, riding his Lancier. Nobody even knew what Lanciers were. Anyway, my favorite tournament has to be the one where I won with my wife in one day in New Orleans, and that $10,000 went quickly to all new furniture. I never saw that 10,000. So she was. I found out she was very good at spending money. She knew how to spend it very well, and came home. All my clothes were gone. All my furniture was gone. I suspected it because one day I came home. We lived in a little place. Our first apartment was on 61st Street between Park and Madison, and we lived above Madame Romaine's pancake house. Do you know that? You remember that? No. Okay, so we lived there, and it was a brownstone, a beautiful brownstone. And when I walked home one day from the bridge club, I saw a bum on one of my favorite bums on the street that I knew, and he was wearing my jacket. I said, or something that looked like it. I said, "This is very suspicious." So I had all new clothes. Thank God. Okay. I have a student at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
2 o'clock. What time is it now?
It's 12:36. But I'm ready. I'm done with you. I'm over you.
Okay, but I would say the best contribution to bridge, I hope, will be method bridge. I would like to put in an ad for that, and that's where you learn that's the only book where I try to teach how to think when playing bridge, not system, not anything else, not tricky stuff, just how to think. And I believe that if you can memorize all the top 5 or 6 or 7 shapes in bridge, like 4, 4, 3, 2, you don't have to count. And if you don't have to count and you could just remember those numbers, you have so much more brain power to be able to create strategies and plays. You and I played a lot of rubber bridge. We didn't need to memorize them, but they were drilled into us as we play bridge, right? As you play, because in rubber bridge you play thousands of hands, and then eventually you know all these shapes by heart without even thinking about memorizing them. But the people who take up bridge today, who I met and I love, these are the people who I met during the COVID era, who are older people, and they took up bridge in their 60s. And later, and they didn't have this background of rubber bridge, and they didn't have the people screaming at them that they had played the wrong card. All right, so they need a method to catch up, and for them to catch up, they have to take all these shapes and memorize them in their spare time, so that they come to the bridge table, they're prepared. And they don't have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, which I hear my students doing sometimes, and it's very frustrating because it's very hard to play bridge when you're counting all the time.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Sure.
All right, I'll talk to you again.
All right, Matt. Thank you so much. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, John.
And, we've covered a wide range of subjects.
A wide range of subjects, yeah. All right.
All right.
Safe travels. I'll talk to you.
Thank you.